Here. Clock it, bitch. Clock that T. Bitch, I better start clocking that T, bitch.
At exactly 10:21 p.m. on Easter Sunday, April 20th, 2025, emergency responders in Birmingham, Alabama received a call that would haunt them for years to come. A 27-year-old man lay trapped between a white SUV and the side of his own home, his life slipping away as family members screamed for help. Just hours earlier, this same house had been filled with the sounds of celebration. Children's laughter echoed through the rooms as they hunted for Easter eggs. Birthday decorations hung from the walls, ready for a little girl's special day. The smell of holiday dinner still lingered in the air. Now, emergency lights painted the scene in harsh red and blue, illuminating a tragedy that no one saw coming. The victim wasn't a stranger to violence, but as someone who helped control it. Mickese James Bostic worked as a juvenile detention officer, spending his days helping troubled youth find better paths. He was known for his ability to calm situations, to bring peace where there was chaos. His colleagues trusted him to handle the most difficult cases. Yet here he was, pinned against his own home by a vehicle driven by someone who should have loved him most. We've investigated hundreds of domestic violence cases, but this one stands apart. Not because of its brutality, though that's undeniable. Not because of the victims involved, though their stories will break your heart. This case stands apart because of what happened in the minutes leading up to 10:21 p.m., and the question that haunts everyone who knew Mickese Bostic. How does a family celebration turn into a murder scene? The physical evidence tells a story that's hard to accept. No skid marks in the grass, no attempt to break, no accident here, just deliberate, calculated destruction of a human life. But physical evidence only tells us what happened. It doesn't tell us why. Why would someone drive an SUV onto a curb, deliberately targeting a man whose only crime was trying to keep the peace? Why would someone choose violence on a day meant for resurrection and new beginnings? Why would someone destroy a father just hours before his daughter's birthday? 4 children witnessed what happened that night. 4 children who will carry these memories forever. 4 children who were actually inside the vehicle when it became a weapon. The person behind the wheel wasn't a stranger. This wasn't a random act of violence or a case of mistaken identity. The driver knew exactly who they were targeting. They knew about the Easter celebration. They knew about the birthday party planned for the next day. They knew about the 5 children who would wake up fatherless. What we're about to share with you challenges everything we think we know about domestic relationships, about family bonds, about the thin line between love and destruction. This isn't just another crime story. It's a window into how quickly paradise can become hell, how celebration can transform into devastation. The investigation revealed details that experienced detectives struggled to process. The timeline of events reads like fiction, but every second has been verified, every action documented, every witness statement confirmed. As we piece together what really happened on Lisa Lane that night, we need to ask ourselves, what pushes someone beyond the point of no return? What transforms a partner into a killer? What turns a family gathering into a crime scene that investigators will never forget? What do you think could drive someone to use their vehicle as a weapon against the person they once promised to love? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if you're ready to explore the darkest corners of human behavior with us, make sure you're subscribed to Crime Vault Stories, because the truth behind this case will challenge everything you believe about domestic violence. The clock stopped at 10:21 p.m., but our investigation is just beginning. To understand the magnitude of what was lost that night, we need to understand who Mickese James Bostic really was. Not just as a victim, but as a man who touched countless lives throughout his 27 years. Those closest to him knew him as Big B, or simply Mickey. The nickname wasn't about his physical stature. It was about his presence. When Mickese walked into a room, tension seemed to evaporate. When troubled teenagers at the G. Ross Bell Juvenile Detention Center saw him coming, their defensive walls came down. For nearly 9 years, Mickese worked with some of Alabama's most challenging youth offenders. These weren't kids who responded well to authority. They'd been failed by systems, by families, by society. Yet somehow, Mickese found ways to reach them. His colleagues often wondered how he did it, how he could walk into a situation where other officers needed backup and somehow restore calm with just his voice. The secret wasn't complicated. Mickese genuinely cared. He remembered details about each youth's case, their families, their dreams buried under layers of anger and disappointment. He'd ask about their siblings, their mothers, their goals for when they got out. While other officers maintained professional distance, Mickese found the humanity in each person he supervised. His supervisor once wrote in a performance review, "Mickese has a natural gift for de-escalation that cannot be taught. He sees potential where others see problems." But Mickese's greatest pride wasn't his professional achievements. It was his role as a father. He had 5 children who meant everything to him. 3 were his biological children with his partner, and 2 were from her previous relationship. To Mickese, there was no difference. All 5 were his kids, period. Every school event, every sports game, every parent-teacher conference, Mickese was there. His colleagues often joked that he scheduled his work shifts around his children's activities, not the other way around. He'd arrive at work with photos on his phone, excited to share his daughter's latest art project or his son's soccer goal. His mother remembers him as the son who never stopped calling. Even with his demanding job and 5 children, Mickese made time for family phone calls, Sunday dinners, and holiday preparations. He believed family bonds required constant nurturing, constant attention, constant love. Mickese had a gift for making ordinary moments feel special. He'd turn grocery shopping into an adventure, transform homework time into family bonding, create traditions from the simplest activities. His children never questioned whether their father loved them. His presence in their lives was constant, reliable, unwavering. His co-workers describe a man who brought homemade lunches to share, who remembered everyone's birthdays, who volunteered for the difficult shifts nobody else wanted. When budget cuts threatened staffing levels at the detention center, Mickese worked extra hours without complaint. When new officers struggled with the emotional demands of the job, Mickese became their unofficial mentor. Outside of work and family, Mickese was known throughout his neighborhood as someone you could count on. Need help moving furniture? Call Mickey. Car won't start? Mickey had jumper cables. Neighbor's kid getting into trouble? Mickey would have a conversation with them, the same way he talked to the youth at work. He wasn't perfect, nobody is. But Mickese possessed something rare, the ability to see the best in people, even when they couldn't see it themselves. Whether dealing with a 16-year-old offender or his own children, he approached relationships with patience, understanding, and hope. His faith played a significant role in his life. Mickese believed in second chances, in redemption, in the power of love to overcome mistakes. This philosophy guided his work with juvenile offenders and his approach to parenting. The irony wasn't lost on those who knew him best. Here was a man who spent his career preventing violence, who dedicated his life to helping others find peaceful solutions to their problems, who believed every conflict could be resolved through communication and compassion. Shatice Jackson and Mickese Bostic's relationship began like many modern love stories. 2 people finding each other while navigating the complexities of previous relationships and existing children. What started as genuine affection between 2 young adults would evolve into something far more complicated. Jackson brought 2 children from a previous relationship into their partnership. Mickese, as we've established, embraced them completely. Together, they had 3 more children, creating a household of 7 people with different histories, different needs, and different loyalties. Blended families face unique pressures that traditional nuclear families never encounter. Questions of discipline, favoritism, financial responsibility, and emotional bonds create constant negotiations. Who makes decisions about which children? How do you handle disagreements about parenting styles when biological loyalties come into play? What happens when extended family members don't fully accept the blended arrangement? For Jackson, these pressures were intensified by Mickese's strong family connections. The Bostic family was tight-knit with clear expectations about how relationships should function, how children should be raised, and how conflicts should be resolved. Jackson sometimes felt like an outsider trying to fit into an already established family structure. Mickese's job added another layer of complexity. Working with juvenile offenders meant unpredictable hours, emotional exhaustion, and constant exposure to family dysfunction. When you spend your days dealing with the worst outcomes of family breakdown, it's difficult to come home and navigate your own relationship challenges with patience and perspective. Jackson had her own career pressures and personal relationships that didn't always align with Mickese's expectations. She maintained friendships that Mickese's family didn't always approve of. She had her own ideas about parenting, about finances, about how their household should function. The couple's arguments often centered around these fundamental differences. Jackson felt controlled and judged. Mickese felt disrespected and undermined. Both were trying to protect their children while building a life together, but their approaches often conflicted. Money was a constant source of tension. 5 children require significant resources, and disagreements about spending priorities created ongoing friction. Jackson wanted certain things for her children that Mickese couldn't always provide. Mickese had financial obligations to his extended family that Jackson didn't always understand or support. Jackson's relationship with Mickese's mother and siblings was particularly strained. They viewed her as someone who didn't fully appreciate what Mickese brought to the relationship. She viewed them as judgmental and intrusive. These family dynamics created pressure that neither Mickese nor Jackson knew how to resolve. Communication between them had deteriorated over the months leading up to Easter 2025. What once were discussions had become arguments. What once were compromises had become ultimatums. The couple found themselves in cycles of conflict that neither seemed able to break. Jackson felt increasingly isolated within the relationship. She believed Mickese always sided with his family during disputes. She felt her voice wasn't heard when major decisions were made about their household. She felt criticized for her parenting choices and her personal relationships. Mickese, meanwhile, felt torn between the woman he loved and the family who had always supported him. He wanted peace in his household, but he also couldn't understand why Jackson seemed to resist the very people who had welcomed her into their circle. He wanted to protect everyone, but found himself constantly mediating conflicts. The stress of managing 5 children, 2 careers, extended family expectations, and their own relationship issues created an environment where small disagreements could explode into major confrontations. Both Jackson and Shatice were strong-willed people who weren't accustomed to backing down from fights. Friends of the couple noticed changes in their interactions during the months before Easter. The easy affection they once displayed had been replaced by careful politeness. The playful banter had become pointed comments. The shared glances had become avoiding eye contact. Jackson had begun expressing frustration more openly to her own family and friends. She felt trapped in a situation where she could never measure up to the Bostic family's expectations. She felt like her own needs and desires were constantly being subordinated to everyone else's comfort. Neither Jackson nor Mickese seemed to recognize how dangerous their relationship had become. They were both so focused on winning individual battles that they lost sight of what they were destroying in the process. What they needed was intervention, counseling, or separation. What they got instead was Easter Sunday. Easter Sunday began with promise at the Bostic family home on Lisa Lane. The house was decorated for both Easter celebrations and a birthday party. Dual festivities that had taken weeks of planning. By early afternoon, relatives, friends, and children filled the rooms with holiday energy. The gathering included multiple generations of the Bostic family, along with Jackson's friends and their children. Easter egg hunts were organized for the younger kids. Food covered every available surface in the kitchen. Birthday decorations waited in the living room for the next day's celebration. For most of the afternoon, the party proceeded without incident. Children played together while adults caught up on family news. Jackson and Mickese moved through the gathering as hosts, ensuring guests had food and drinks, organizing activities for the kids, managing the controlled chaos of a large family event. The first sign of trouble came when one of Jackson's friends prepared to leave. While backing out of the driveway, the friend accidentally struck a parked vehicle. The damage was minor, a scratched bumper, a small dent. Under normal circumstances, this would have been handled with insurance information and apologies. Instead, the incident became a flashpoint. Jackson's reaction to the accident triggered immediate criticism from some of Mickese's family members. They felt she should have better controlled her friend's behavior. They questioned why Jackson had invited someone who was careless with other people's property. Jackson defended her friend and pushed back against what she perceived as unfair criticism. The disagreement quickly escalated beyond the original car accident. Old grievances surfaced. Previous conflicts were relitigated. Voices rose as family members chose sides. The argument moved from the driveway into the house. What started as a discussion about car damage became a full-scale confrontation about Jackson's place in the family, her parenting decisions, and her choice of friends. Multiple people were shouting simultaneously. Food was thrown during the height of the argument. Exactly who threw what remains disputed, but witnesses confirm that plates and drinks were hurled across the room. Children began crying as the adult conflict intensified around them. Mickese attempted to physically restrain Jackson during the most heated moments. His intention was de-escalation, the same approach he used at work when situations got out of control. However, Jackson interpreted his intervention as taking his family's side against her. Neighbors, alarmed by the noise level, called police to report a domestic disturbance. Officers arrived to find a house in chaos. Food on the floor, multiple people arguing, children upset and confused. They interviewed several participants and assessed the situation. After determining that no criminal activity had occurred, police advised everyone to calm down and left the premises. Their departure occurred around 8:30 p.m. The officers had no way of knowing that their decision to leave would prove fatal within the next hour. The house didn't return to normal after the police left. Most of the guests departed, taking their children with them. The festive atmosphere was completely destroyed. Cleanup began, but tensions remained high between Jackson and the remaining family members. Jackson left the house sometime after 9 p.m., taking her brother with her. Her stated intention was to cool down and give everyone space to calm down. She drove away in her white SUV, leaving the 4 children at the house with Mickese and his family. At approximately 9:47 p.m., Jackson returned. This time, she was carrying a firearm. Her brother remained with her. The 4 children, all under the age of 12, were now in her vehicle. Jackson announced that she had come back to collect personal belongings. However, her arrival with a weapon immediately escalated tensions that had been simmering since her departure. Family members questioned why she felt a gun was necessary to retrieve clothes and personal items. Another argument erupted, this one more intense than the earlier confrontation. Jackson felt threatened by the hostile reception from Mickese's family. They felt threatened by the presence of a firearm in what should have been a simple conversation about belongings. During this second confrontation, Jackson fired a single shot into the air. She later claimed this was intended as a deterrent, a way to force Mickese's family to back away and allow her to gather her things without further interference. The gunshot had the opposite effect. Instead of creating space, it brought Mickese directly into the conflict. He approached Jackson and attempted to take the weapon away from her. His experience with violent situations at work had taught him that firearms escalate every conflict exponentially. The struggle over the gun was brief but intense. Jackson managed to retain control of the weapon, but the physical altercation left both of them angry and adrenaline-charged. Family members screamed for them to stop fighting. Jackson got into her SUV with the 4 children still inside. Mickese stood near the vehicle, still trying to defuse the situation through conversation. He approached the driver's side window, likely attempting to negotiate a peaceful resolution that would protect the children. What happened next lasted less than 30 seconds, but changed everything forever. Jackson put the vehicle in gear and accelerated. Her first attempt to strike Mickese appeared to miss, but she immediately maneuvered for a second approach. This time, she drove the SUV onto the curb and directly toward the side of the house. Mickese was caught between the vehicle and the wall. The impact pinned him against the house with devastating force. The absence of any brake marks in the grass provided clear evidence of intentional acceleration rather than accidental collision. Family members rushed to help, but the damage was catastrophic. Emergency services were called immediately, but Mickese's injuries were beyond medical intervention. This timeline reveals a disturbing pattern: how quickly conflicts can escalate when pride replaces communication and weapons enter domestic disputes. If you've ever witnessed these red flags in relationships around you, we want to hear about it in the comments. How do we better protect families before reaching these breaking points? At 10:21 p.m., exactly 34 minutes after Jackson's return, Mickese Bostic was pronounced dead. Birmingham Police Department detectives arrived at the scene to find a complex investigation requiring immediate preservation of multiple types of evidence. The front yard had become a crime scene where every detail would be crucial to determining intent versus accident. Detective John Fink, a veteran homicide investigator, took charge of evidence collection. The first priority was documenting the vehicle's path and impact patterns. The white SUV remained positioned against the house exactly where it had come to rest after the collision. Forensic analysis of the grass revealed the most damning piece of physical evidence: a complete absence of brake marks. The tire tracks showed continuous acceleration from the driveway onto the curb and toward the house. No evidence suggested any attempt to slow down or change direction once the vehicle began moving toward Mickese. The impact point against the house showed significant structural damage. The force required to cause this level of destruction indicated high-speed collision rather than a slow-moving accident. Paint transfer from the SUV was embedded in the brick wall, providing additional evidence of the vehicle's trajectory and speed. Inside the SUV, investigators found the firearm Jackson had discharged earlier. Ballistic evidence confirmed that one round had been fired, consistent with witness accounts of the warning shot. The weapon's placement in the vehicle suggested it had been set aside before Jackson got behind the wheel. Crime scene photographers documented every angle of the collision site. The positioning of debris, the depth of tire impressions in the soil, and the specific location where Mickese's body was found all supported a reconstruction of deliberate vehicular assault rather than accidental impact. Witness interviews began immediately while memories were fresh and before family members could coordinate their stories. Multiple people had observed the entire sequence of events from different vantage points, providing investigators with overlapping accounts that confirmed key details. Mickese's sister provided one of the most emotionally powerful testimonies. She described holding her brother's hand during his final moments, watching helplessly as emergency responders worked to save him. Her account of Jackson's demeanor immediately after the collision painted a picture of someone who showed no remorse or surprise at the outcome. Jackson's own statements to police became crucial evidence against her. During initial questioning at the scene, she admitted to firing the warning shot and acknowledged deliberately driving toward Mickese's. Her explanation that she felt threatened by his family's aggression contradicted the physical evidence of sustained acceleration. The 4 children who witnessed the events from inside the SUV were interviewed by specially trained officers experienced in questioning juvenile witnesses. Their accounts, while limited by their ages, corroborated adult witness statements about Jackson's actions behind the wheel. Detective Finke's investigation revealed that Jackson had made no attempt to call emergency services after the collision. While family members immediately called 911, Jackson remained in her vehicle, showing no concern for Mickese's condition. This behavior pattern suggested consciousness of guilt rather than accident-related shock. Phone records from the evening showed no communication between Jackson and anyone outside the immediate area. She hadn't called friends, family members, or anyone else who might have provided emotional support during a traumatic accident. This absence of typical post-trauma behavior supported the theory of intentional action. The medical examiner's report detailed the extent of Mickese's injuries, confirming that the force of impact was consistent with intentional vehicular assault. The pattern of trauma showed he had been compressed between two solid surfaces, the SUV and the house, with tremendous force. Jackson's defense team immediately began building a self-defense argument. They claimed she had been physically assaulted by Mickese and his family members, creating a situation where she feared for her safety. However, no medical evidence supported claims of serious physical injury to Jackson. The presence of the 4 children during the assault became a crucial factor in determining charges. Prosecutors argued that using a vehicle as a weapon while children were passengers demonstrated particular callousness and disregard for innocent life. During the preliminary hearing, Detective Finke testified about Jackson's admissions and the overwhelming physical evidence pointing to premeditation. The judge found sufficient evidence to support capital murder charges, elevated specifically because the crime occurred in the presence of minors. Jackson was arrested at the scene and has remained in custody since the night of April 20th. Her bond was denied based on the severity of the charges and the strength of the evidence against her. Additional investigation revealed no history of domestic violence reports involving Jackson and Mickese, which complicated both prosecution and defense narratives. The absence of documented prior incidents meant that Easter Sunday represented either a dramatic escalation of hidden abuse or an isolated explosion of lethal violence. The investigation concluded with multiple felony charges, including capital murder, assault, and endangering the welfare of children. Prosecutors announced their intention to seek the maximum possible sentence, citing the deliberate nature of the crime and its impact on the children who witnessed their father's murder. Every piece of evidence, physical, testimonial, and circumstantial, pointed toward the same conclusion. Shatice Jackson had deliberately used her vehicle as a weapon to kill Mickese Bostic, while 4 children watched from inside the car. As Shatice Jackson awaits trial for capital murder, the legal proceedings have drawn national attention to domestic violence prevention and intervention strategies. Her defense continues to maintain that extreme emotional distress and fear for her safety justified her actions, while prosecutors prepare to argue that every element of the crime demonstrates premeditated murder. The trial date has been set for fall 2025, with jury selection expected to be challenging given the extensive media coverage. Jackson faces the possibility of life imprisonment without parole if convicted on all charges. The capital murder charge, enhanced by the presence of children during the commission of the crime, carries Alabama's most severe penalties. Legal experts following the case note that the overwhelming physical evidence makes conviction likely, but the sentencing phase could hinge on Jackson's defense team's ability to present mitigating factors. Character witnesses, mental health evaluations, and testimony about the relationship dynamics leading up to Easter Sunday will all play crucial roles in determining her ultimate punishment. The Jefferson County community has responded to Mickese's death with an outpouring of support for his 5 children and broader initiatives to address domestic violence. Local organizations have established the Mickese Bostic Memorial Fund to provide ongoing financial support for his children's education and basic needs. Miles for Mickese, an annual community event, has been organized to raise both funds and awareness about domestic violence prevention. The event brings together law enforcement, social workers, educators, and community members to promote early intervention strategies and support resources for at-risk families. The G. Rossbell Juvenile Detention Center has implemented new training programs in Mickese's honor, focusing on de-escalation techniques and conflict resolution skills. His approach to working with troubled youth has become a model for other facilities throughout Alabama, ensuring that his professional legacy continues to impact young lives positively. Educational initiatives have emerged from this tragedy, with local schools incorporating domestic violence awareness into their health and safety curricula. Students learn about healthy relationship boundaries, conflict resolution, and resources available when home situations become dangerous. Faith communities throughout Jefferson County have organized support groups for families dealing with domestic conflict. These programs emphasize early intervention and provide safe spaces for people to discuss relationship problems before they escalate to violence. The children who witnessed their father's murder have received extensive counseling and community support. Memorial gifts, including personalized remembrance items, have been provided to help them process their grief while maintaining positive memories of their father. Mickese's mother has become an advocate for domestic violence prevention, speaking at community events about the importance of recognizing relationship red flags and seeking help before conflicts turn deadly. Her message emphasizes that domestic violence crosses all social and economic boundaries. The most lasting tribute to Mickese's memory may be the countless conversations his death has sparked about protecting families from domestic violence. Community leaders emphasize that while his life was cut short, his impact on preventing future tragedies continues to grow. Mickese Bostic's story reminds us that behind every domestic violence statistic is a real person with dreams, children, and people who loved them. If this case has opened your eyes to the reality of domestic violence in our communities, subscribe to Crime Vault Stories. Together, we can shine light on the cases that demand justice and the changes that can save lives. His legacy lives on in every family that finds help before it's too late.